Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? It is a pleasure to be here with you as usual on this wonderful Saturday. So, those of you that are just tuning in for the very first time, this is the Good Bit Stream where we highlight all the amazing things that are happening in the world of Bitcoin that has nothing to do with price. Now, you might be seeing this title and thinking, like, wow, what bullish news could we possibly have? But guess what? There is always bullish news on the Good Bit Stream. So, if you know anyone that is interested in Bitcoin, and not looking for blood in the streets, all this craziness that is going on currently on the timeline, this is the place to be. So, those of you that don't know, my name is Taj, aka Tropic, always hanging out with Cade, the Wolf Bitcoin crew, having a wonderful time. But we're going to highlight a few things that are absolutely bullish for Bitcoin. And again, this is the adoption, the usage, and we like to highlight the various circular economies around the globe and also the technology that's allowing people to do these things. So, what I have up on the page here before I jump to the main story, but is related to it, is a Kaze app. Now, this is a map that maps out various Bitcoin circular economies, etc. Shows you where you can pay for things in sats. And I think it's absolutely amazing because this is the type of thing that I like to highlight because personally, there's lots of various things that are happening all around the world, various apps being built, engagements, etc., that do things like this. But what I find very interesting is this is a local solution to local problems, right? So engineered for local economies. So depending where you are in the world, you have various transaction fees, you have various merchant problems, etc. So applications like this, which build on the shoulders of giants, if you will, using open source technology, using various platforms that helps other, I guess you would say, developers to springboard their idea and tailor it locally. This is the type of thing that I like to highlight simply because this is a wallet that allows these merchant services and so on. And one of the huge things with merchant services and these particular Bitcoin wallets is how do we reimburse our merchants, restock our physical goods, et cetera? And these are the type of things that I like to see because, okay, yes, you can invoice, you can have various transactions and sats, but however, from the front, you actually have stable amounts that allows merchants to then reimburse or I should say, replenish their stock, pay for their vendors, their staff, et cetera, which in this world that we're currently in, not currently on the Bitcoin standard, whichever local jurisdiction you're in, it's going to be in some form of fiat, right? If you're doing international trade, 9 out of 10 times you're probably going to the US dollar. So it's very interesting to see something like this where you're using QR codes, the scanning the bar to get up the wallets and so forth. But you can invoice, you can find other merchants and all these different things. So it has a built-in wallet. You earn rewards, all these type of things and language that we're used to. We're used to earning rewards when we shop or we use apps and so on. And that's building it into this Bitcoin wallet and allowing for circular economy. So you have your maps, you have your other merchants, places that you can go to spend the money, etc. And then also you're earning rewards and doing some awesome things. So there's openings for partnerships and so on, all these different things. Now, why am I highlighting this? Because this is a global show and this is over in Africa. Yes, the continent of Africa, not North America, not Europe, but Africa, where I like to highlight a lot of things as the global south, as we like to call it, even though Africa is really east, but it is south of Europe. But massive continents. But when I say Africa, I don't want to diminish what's happening in Kenya and South Africa and all these local jurisdictions. But the cool things are happening on the continent, in my opinion. But anywho, I was on a space on Friday with the gentleman that is heading this up and introduced this to me, which was Wycliffe. And Wycliffe was explaining how they're solving local problems because, like, the major thing is the onboarding, the on and off ramp. And a lot of Bitcoiners are like, that is absolutely horrible. There should be no on and off ramp. It's either you're Bitcoin or you're not. And truthfully, those are people that are very privileged, their position of just holding wealth and storing it for generational wealth, etc. And the actual the boots on the ground businesses that are being ran all around the world, they have serious problems when it comes to digital payments because it is not easy to just accept debit cards and credit card in every country. Certain countries are just completely locked out from the financial institutions, if you will. Globally, they're just flagged. If you even try to do e-commerce from a lot of these countries, either the site is completely blocked off and you have to use a VPN, or when it comes to the processing, you can't even select that company or that country as a payment for, whichever card that you're using, because they just completely block all transactions from that. So you're lumping in all of the bad actors, if you will, with the good actors. And because of that, millions or billions of dollars worth of transactions are just not even happening because the restrictions of a particular region. So with that, these type of things with Bitcoin, of course, that is not a problem. And just allowing these on off ramps, these merchant services, etc., I think is absolutely great because fintech is like you take it for granted if you live in a jurisdiction where there's a lot of fintech and there's a lot of those types of innovations, the Stripes of the world, the Robin Hoods, et cetera, et cetera. So you just think that's just the norm everywhere. And truthfully, it is not. I remember where I currently live. I live in Jamaica. Those of you that are interested in TradFi and stocks and so on, when I first came back to the island, 2015 or so, the stock market was still basically running on paper. Yes, there was like a digital inference, but you couldn't just directly access that, right? So you'd have to go to these brokerages, and the brokerages didn't have online trading. There was like no day trading, all that stuff. And this is 2015, right? So I'm just using that from a TradFi example of what's happening globally. And this is not like some undeveloped, beat up country. Like this is, supposedly ranked one of the best stock markets, et cetera, in the world. Like liquidity is an issue. Like that's another conversation for a different day. However, this is supposed to be one of the better stock markets, right? And that was an issue, not being able to have access, the digital ease of use. So when it comes to merchant services, it's even more difficult. Right now, we're trying to set up a business bank account here, and how long it actually takes. And if we didn't know the people, it'd even take longer trying to get in contact with the one banker that can sign off on these things. It's absolutely crazy. But anywho, so going back to this now, merchant services like this is a huge thing all around the world. So you see different apps like this. It might seem like a gimmick depending in which jurisdiction you're in. And you might listen to Jack Dorsey and you're saying, hey, man, he's always talking about spending sats. Bitcoin fails if they don't spend sats. Like, what is going on here? Do I really believe that? Well, that's what's going on in this case, and why people are actually all around the world. Oftentimes, so many times, I say at least once. All right, let me be conservative and say once every 2 weeks, I'll hear somebody say on a space that nobody wants to spend their sats. Nobody wants to spend Bitcoin. Well, that is not true. And there's services for businesses that allows people to do that because those are the financial problems that they have in various areas. And using Kenya, for example, Tando, which is a wallet that I often refer to. I'm going to go to this for a couple times because number one, you can see up here that they're embracing decentralized social media as well. Those of you that don't know, as far as that NPub right there. If you go to it, Nostr is an open source social media. So depending which interface you want to use, but basically that's your username, and it could be in any kind of app. Anyone can build an app, whether you want it to be a YouTube type of app, whether you want it to be a Twitter interface or whatever it might be. You can use that Nostr, the NPub right there, and just like basically you own that identity. But anywho, a lot of these Bitcoin wallets, these circular economies, that's where you're going to find a lot of information, and you're going to see how they're onboarding people and spreading the adoption, if you will. And what's really cool is you can see right here, this is people shopping, buying groceries in the store, buying regular everyday items and so on. And this is just the norm. They're using QR codes, they're using various codes and et cetera, and they're shopping. I think it's just absolutely a great thing and an interesting thing. This is the type of thing that's going on around the world. And it's just second nature. In a lot of places, if you go to them and say, hey, no one wants to spend Bitcoin, they're like, what? What are you talking about? None of our friends that are in business accept credit card payments because they can't get a processing license or whatever it might be, but they're accepting Bitcoin Lightning, and that is the digital payments. Otherwise, in a lot of jurisdictions, what it is like a bank transfer. Kind of like would be, I guess you'd say Zelle or yeah, I'd say Zelle. I won't say ACH because ACH is a little bit slower, but basically that's what it is in most jurisdictions. Like, let's say you're in I don't know, just any country, just and whatever the big bank is in that, like most people in that country probably have an account with them, so they just transact from user to user using the bank system, and that's how a lot of digital transactions happens. But it's kind of cumbersome. You have to give out your information, your bank account number, and we know the risks of giving out more information. And that's why in a lot of these countries, rather than saying, hey, give me your banking number so I can wire you or transfer you some funds, and what they will do is they'll just say, hey, here's the QR code, here's the invoice, pay in Bitcoin, and it's all good. So that's a win-win for everybody. But you might be wondering, okay, like, well, what's really going on here? Why is this title that stablecoins gave Bitcoin this win? Well, I'm going to look at this post right here. And what's quite interesting with this is with FinCEN and some interesting things with the Federal Reserve and all these various acronyms and letters, they're teaming up. And this was in the Genius Act. So a lot of people celebrate the Genius Act as some sort of like big win for Bitcoin somehow. And a lot of people were saying like, yeah, this is huge for crypto. We have a pro crypto administration. This is just, it's all up from here. Well, we know how that went. So as far as being bullish for Bitcoin, right? Here's the thing. These regulated stablecoin issuers, these PPSIs, right? Like Circle, PayPal, etc. They're going to be required, and of course, this is going to be up for, I guess you'd say, review at the end of August. Is it? Yeah, August 21st is when it's going to go for review. But your legal name, your date of birth, your physical address, your government identification number, all these different things. So it's like KYC to the fullest. Now you might be saying, well, if I'm not doing anything illegal, it's like, why do I even worry about that? Well, these are the concerns that we had when we're talking about CBDCs, which the CBDC ban came in, as far as the US just kind of snuck in there in one of these bills. Well, here's the thing, right? If stablecoins are requiring me to give up my legal name and all this various information, well, then they also have the powers to claw back. They can do different reverse transactions, freeze funds, etc. And we saw that in the series of hacks that happened earlier in this year, where on various blockchains, it's not just one blockchain where everyone was pointing fingers at Justin Sun and Tron and all this stuff, but this was happening across the board with stable coins, that they were freezing stuff. And like, yeah, when it is a hacker that stole hundreds of millions of dollars, or even $1, doesn't really matter how much the figure is, you're like, yeah, good. They shouldn't have access to those funds. But at the same time, right, the same power that wields and shuts down the hackers is the same power that might be wielded to, let's say, shut down someone just because you have a political view that's a little bit different than what is the ruling party, if you will, in that particular jurisdiction. You'd be like, hey, no, like they're giving donations to my competitors, et cetera, et cetera. It's really slippery slope. So a conversation also comes up. Why do people so fear CBDCs and so on? Well, because of the control. Now, the issue with that, yes, there was a CBDC ban agreed upon, et cetera. But if stablecoins have this power and the ability to do all the things that we fear with CBDCs, do they really need CBDCs? They're using private companies to be able to do the bidding of what a CBDC would be. But instead of blaming the Federal Reserve, because it's central bank digital currency, in the case of the US, would be ran by the Fed, or in whichever country, the Chinese Bank of China, Bank of Jamaica, right? That these are literal ones. The Bahamas has a sand dollar, et cetera. So like the federal banking system of that particular jurisdiction, right? The central bank would be the one that's running that. So in those jurisdictions, yeah, like all the blame goes to the equivalents of the Federal Reserve. But because in the US, it's shifting away from a CBDC where the Federal Reserve is at the center of it and going to these private corporations. Well, they kind of escape the blame. However, they're being required to have the same powers of what a CBDC would be. Now, look into that yourself. But going back to the positive side of the story, right? This whole thing is like, this is bullish news for Bitcoin, et cetera. Well, I opened up by talking about these various wallets, right? And these various initiatives that are happening all around the world that look something like this, right? Well, here's the thing. Every time you hear someone say, well, nobody wants to spend Bitcoin, you could just use stable coins. You could use this, you can use that, you can all these different things. Well, here's the thing. The merchants have a huge problems with the fluctuation, the volatility of Bitcoin. But various innovations such as stable sats is where things get really interesting. Now, that particular wallet has like a completely different one that I was doing with Kaze. But however, stable sats is the same, I guess you would say, foundation, same idea. But there is something that's in addition to that. But with stable sats, so when you get an invoice or you are paying stable sats or saying in stable sats, you're actually using Bitcoin, right? Via Lightning. However, the value does not fluctuate. The volatility is gone. So not going into all the technicals, I highly recommend you just look this up, stablesats.com, and look how the Blink wallet and all Lightning wallets that were built and forked, cloned off of the code that is the Blink wallet uses this technology called StableSats. Quite interesting what's happening there, because it all the arguments and I guess you would say reasons for someone to use stablecoins completely vanishes, right? So you use this thing, it is just as cheap, just as fast, but still supporting Bitcoin and using the Bitcoin network. So why is this absolutely bullish? Well, here's the thing. The largest capital market, which is the US, if they're starting to make stablecoins look very CBDC-ish, right? It's not a word, but I'm making it up. CBDC-ish, right? People are going to start to kick the buck. I mean, at 250 years of freedom and all this amazing stuff, right? Right. It's only a matter of time before Americans realize, like, hey, what is going on here? This whole stablecoin thing, maybe we're better off really using this Bitcoin thing rather than the stablecoins, because a lot of people are talking about stablecoins. Like, you can just, I remember the Bitcoin conference 2 years ago. It seemed like it was the stablecoin conference. Everyone, stablecoins, stablecoins, stablecoins. They had the various politicians, the various companies, but everywhere it was stablecoins. But here we go. The biggest capital markets in the entire world is seeing that, things are a little tricky over here. So if they start to look over on the stable stats using Bitcoin Lightning Wallet, like the developing nations, the global South, Latin America, South America, and Southeast Asia, you might start to finally see Jack Dorsey's vision come true. Now, those of you that don't know, with Block and Cash App, all these different things, he's trying to vigorously and I would say vehemently promote the use of Bitcoin to everyday users, everyday transactions. And a lot of people say nobody really wants that, et cetera, et cetera. But if you are bought into the whole freedom idea, all the ethos of what is Bitcoin, and not necessarily price go up, like, doesn't matter if it's a red day or a green day, but if you're using this as money as it was intended to be, digital cash, then the options like this actually kind of looks more attractive, right? So a bullish case for Bitcoin would be that people that were all in on stablecoin, saying that is the route to go, it just doesn't make sense to use Bitcoin. They might say, yeah, you know what? I'm not really so sure about the stablecoins anymore, because it reminds me a lot about the CBDCs, which I heard such things about. Again, do your own research. I'm not trying to shape your opinions on CBDCs, whatever. It is up to you to see if that is a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, whatever. I'm not preaching. I'm just saying simply that, even though I am wearing a tie, long story short, I just came from a tie event. But if you have your own convictions and you think that stablecoins are good, okay, fine, use stablecoins. Beautiful thing about this whole system is there's freedom, right? Nobody is forced to use Bitcoin. Now, you don't really have much of a say if you're going to use your local currency or not, because guess what? Your property taxes is going to be collected in that local currency. Therefore, if you own property, you kind of got to play the game, my friend. You got to play the king, if you will, the gold that has his face on it. Like, that's just how he rolls. I guess back in the day, you could just melt it down and put his face on it. But when we're talking about fiat, right? That's what the currency is. Like, the whole world runs on debt, all this crazy stuff that's happening. Definitely appreciate that right there. Yeah, retweet this for sure. But I would say that if you are in this world, these are the values that you actually are appreciative of. And you're thinking of this thing like, man, Bitcoin is down so much. Like, why would I even get into this as a merchant? Well, there is the options of this. So this is not the only option, but just look around and see like the various things. But I think it's just really a bullish thing, because if everyone starts to see stable coins for what they are, kind of problematic, right? It solves problems. And of course, again, remittances and people overseas, whatever, it doesn't have to deal with all this stuff, because guess what? They're overseas. They don't care about that. But if you really think about it, the issuance of, or the issuers of these various stable coins, well, they're under US jurisdiction in many cases. Therefore, they got to play the game. That's why Tether also has a US compliant Tether that's going to be rolling out and going mainstream to combat the, I guess you would say, USDC, which is very popular in the States. Everywhere else, the rest of the world is a USDT Tether world. However, there's much to be had in that front, and I think stable sats is something that's worth looking into. Various Lightning wallets, merchants, etc., and how they're using this stuff. I find it very interesting. So if you know any circular economies that you're interested in, all this technology and how people are onboarding, we like to highlight all of the stuff that's in the world. And we're always looking for great stories. So please, DMs are open. Always happy to hear from you. But most importantly, like, we just appreciate you spending not just your Saturday evenings with us, watching a live stream about Bitcoin and all these stable coins and stable sats, all this stuff. But we're looking forward to hearing from you, connecting with you. We have spaces, live streams, you name it, every single day of the week. And we're looking forward to all these amazing things. Cave goes live tomorrow evening. Every day we have something for you, and we appreciate you and all of yours. So share this out, tell a friend. And again, always looking to hear more from you. So have a nice one, and I'll see you on the next stream.